city, so it seemed like a good enough time to record yet another podcast. Welcome to this version of reality. As everybody already guessed, this is Liamo All-Star here, and it's an interesting day. I'm in the city. I'm doing some qualifications. Well, I'm in between it right now. Well, as of this podcast, I would have already finished it, obviously, and passed, making the assumption that I failed. What qualification, you ask? Oh, it's none of your business. Alright, well, it's a barista course. I decided to do some coffee making and coffee arts. Why? Because I'm fancy boy. No, because I'm the all-star. And because I can. That's why. How are you all doing? I would say myself, I'm doing alright. Especially considering, the title of the podcast is exactly the topic of discussion. And sort of plagiaristic in a way as well. Sometimes you kill, sometimes you get killed. Now, what the hell could I mean about that? I mean, it's various different meanings, but in this case, it is applicable to the night that I killed in one gig, and then the next night died in the other. So why the hell would I want to announce that to the whole world and acknowledge that I failed? Well, it's like even Michael Jordan said, I failed over and over again. So I failed time and time again, and that is why I succeed. And it's true, because I've had many successes, and only at the latter stages of this career in stand-up comedy have I actually had a couple of fumbles and fallen flat on my face, trying out some new material, and I guess not playing safe at all, just going all out with 5 minutes of new material. That's where I died a couple of times. But not necessarily because it just fell completely flat, because it just didn't work out in the end. I mean, it's more of a force and you're trying to make it work, but first things first, let's talk about the positive. Let's go to the positive, shall we? Because sometimes you kill, and it's true. Sometimes you absolutely kill it. You're on, no matter what you do. And in particular, with the stand-up, I was on, and I was lit up, on fire. I was on a hot streak for quite some time. In the very beginning, doing different routine, and then hit a routine that it did okay, but it didn't really achieve what it was supposed to achieve, and it was a rough crowd, and it allowed a heckler who thought he was better than the rest of everyone to try and bounce on, and I wasn't the only one, he was on everyone, but to give him the sort of opportunity, I guess you could say, by allowing him, the space, just the gap to have that sort of opening, whereas, sometimes you get hecklers that are just going to comment no matter what. They're just going to take away from your show. But as comedy goes, and any performance, your show's got to be better than the worst heckler. It's got to be better than the referee in other performance, because they're the referees. It's the same if a referee is biased, or judge, or whatever you happen to be. They are the judge, they are the referees, the audience, and you've got to be better than them. It's one thing that I learned in martial arts as well, is that you've got to be better than the referee. And trust me when I say in martial arts, there are plenty of, especially around local tournaments, and sometimes it's not intentional, but other times it most definitely is intentional, where they bias. They can't see past their own students. They can't see past, they don't want to believe that someone might be better than them. So if they see a score, it could even be, in any game, like, rugby, gridiron, whatever brand of football. There are times where absolutely the ref did not make the right call, that maybe they had a general bias towards a particular team, a particular player, a particular side, and it does show. But to that person, they're just calling it down where they see the line. And that's where, no matter what, always got to be better than the referee. So if you succeed in spite of the facts, and after I had that flat spot where the routine got a response, but didn't do well, then routine, went to LA, and then came back, started working on some old stuff. There were two particular routines that I started working on. One was the car park routine, which I'd been doing rather recently, and then the one after that was the marriage, not the marriage routine, which I call it the gay routine because it's on the topic, just, it's just my little subtopic, and when I did the second alteration of the gay routine, did not work. There was another routine I was working on, but it felt like I was prattling it along, and what I did was I combined the routine, the test jokes that I did in LA because I only had the 3 minutes, combined it with the gay routines, crunched it together, basically made it the best routine that I've ever done, and I've been killing it ever since with that routine. Then I pulled out another routine, which I'd done before another audience, and I got an okay response, but at a particular room, at a particular time, it did okay, and then I went from killing to I was killed. I was dead. Not that anyone jumped on me or, heckled me to death or anything like that. A polite enough audience that they didn't, try to ruin the show, and a decent MC that was respectful at the time. I believe Damien Power was the one, and, the fact that I'm even bringing it up right now, a few people will remember that night where it's like, once I got to that 4-minute 30 mark, I did the performance as if it was successful. And that brings up another thing, because also I go back to martial arts because that's my other passion. It's the other thing that, I've been doing for a long time. And maybe I've even discussed this before, but with regards to your forms, your kata, your patterns, your flows, the people will know what I'm talking about, when they do martial arts performances. And you go out there and you do your route. It's a routine, that's what it is. It's a routine of moves and combinations of attacks and blocks and, footwork in a pattern. That's basically what forms are. But it is, in effect, a routine as well. And the way I see it is that, and maybe it's where some people would say I need to adapt slightly out of that mindset, because there are people that do half and half. They do half their good stuff, their tested old stuff, and then they try some new stuff. And that's a good method, because it guarantees that you will get some laughs at least. But I go all out, and a couple other people do as well, and they have sort of fallen a bit flat, because the routine, the material they do is unfortunately just not as good. Something's missing, something's just not working. And the way I see it personally is, if I'm doing one, because with the martial arts, with the kata, the patterns, the flows, it's all one kata. It's all one. It has to be done that way, because that's the kata, that's the pattern, that's the flow, that's the routine, if you will. But then, if it wasn't working and it wasn't impressing the judges, and I couldn't, if I wasn't confident, and then I just switched into another kata. And I guess this is where mindset is, because sometimes I've seen, and people do notice this as well, when you switch from one routine to another, it's obvious, and I guess it does no favors, because if they've fallen flat on the good material, or the so-called, the new material that you've done that was in your mind good, and maybe you've tested it and it was good to you, but then you go out and you do it and you go, it's not working, I'm going to do this instead. They notice, and it affects the good routine, because sometimes you can just tell, because they've gone from one to the other, and maybe you've got people that have seen your show before that are basically fans of the particular venue, perhaps even fans of you as a comedian. But then what right do I have to say, because I'm still an infant in this game, but this is just my general thoughts, and let that be known for anyone who's listening. It's just thoughts and opinions from my mind. I'd like to get a discussion going with a couple of people at one point, but anyway. So then after I did that routine, I went and worked on the car park routine. That was the next one I pulled out, and I killed with that one. And I did that routine again as an encore on the weekend at Stone's Corner. It did awesome with an audience that was a rock. And why I call them a rock is because they would not budge. They would not move unless you moved them. They were hard to basically move. But I performed my routine and it woke them right up, and it got them laughing. Probably one of the biggest pop of the night. But that's not ego, that's not comparison, that's just me calling it and saying this, I'm not saying, I was the best or this or that. No, I'm just saying that it got the response that I needed, and it did well. So in comparison, I did the routine because I was testing a new routine. I tested at a couple of smaller venues and it did all right. I was still working on it, and I tested it at Newmarket day after. So I killed it at Stone's Corner. Absolutely killed it. And then Newmarket, I go in there and it's another rock audience. They're not budging for anyone. It's a hard to move audience. And I figured stubbornly well, I'm going to give it a shot. But in the back of my mind, and I just got this feeling, I should have listened to my feeling and guts that I shouldn't have done the routine, because it just wasn't really flowing the way it should. And I knew this, but I chose to ignore it for some reason, because I wanted to give it a shot. And even I knew that it was a bad idea, but I did it anyway. And lucky it was an open mic and not a paid gig, because if not, people might have been asking for their money back. Oh, that's interesting. I just saw a bus cut off a bus. Now they know how it feels. Now that right there is probably funnier than the stuff that I put out. But granted, there was people responding, and one or two people came up to me and said, there was some good stuff there. And I shook their hand, looked them in the eye and said, no, it wasn't. Because the audience reaction at best was giggles, not laughs, not belly laughs, not voluntary ovation. And that's where any successful comedian would want to be. And I'm not going to fill my mind with the delusions or get people to tell me what I wanted to hear, because there were a couple of people that did come up to me and say, yeah, you did a good job. It's like, no, look, no. And it's the second time fallen flat on my face. And it's happened, people come up to me and they're polite and it's like, you did good. I understand that getting up on the stage and giving it a go is still good. It's still a step forward. But in this elitist mindset, and I guess perhaps deep down inside, a little bit of low self-esteem and very high level of cynicism and critique and also sarcasm. Like, yeah. If I were to agree with them, it would have been, I did a great job. It was freaking fantastic. We should put me on tour right now with Australia's top comedians. It was that freaking fantastic. Get me a freaking movie deal and put those jokes in a movie and it'll get an Emmy. Yeah. But I killed, and then I died. It happens. Why am I saying it ultimately? Because maybe I just want to put it out there. Maybe I'm putting it out there for me. And maybe also because sometimes you kill, sometimes you get killed. Like the NXS song says. And man, is it a kick-ass song. And it's sort of got in the back of my mind because it's something that I'm thinking about. And if I were to get into all the negative of it and think to myself, this routine, I just did I record every routine and put the stand-up highlights. The particular routine, it won't be up for a while because the stand-up highlights is in a backlog of videos, but one of the times it got a decent response, so I include, the highlights of the response, but it was in a dead venue, so there really wasn't too much, but there was a lot of interaction with an Irish guy, and that was decent stuff. It was funny. And when I did it at another venue the next night, which I was able to score a gig, I did that routine, and I call it the consent routine. It got some pops, and there were parts where it was a bit flat in between, trying to find the medium. But then when I did it at the Newmarket, just the other night, nothing. Now, I guess the fact that I did one routine it killed one night, and I wasn't confident enough to do it at that venue, probably should have told me well and truly, because the negative in my mind, sometimes you got to listen to it, because you cut your losses, you go into damage control. The negative of it is that, damn, I just wasted all this time trying to make this routine work. I just threw away a gig, basically 2 gigs where it was like, yeah, okay, and then another gig in particular, which was the other night, so 3, whereas 1 was a bonus, which I was able to score a gig, and I effectively wasted my time and effort, and it's a routine that will probably just be thrown away unless I could find a way to combine it with another, like I did with with my gay marriage equality routine, which was from 2 mediocre routines which combined together has become one of my best, if not my best. But the other thing to consider as well is that, we're always learning. We never stop learning. And yes, it keeps going back to all my martial, because it's where I learned a lot of this stuff, where you go through the grades, you go through the ranks, the lower, beginner ranks. You learn all the techniques, you learn all the combinations, you learn all the scenarios. It won't necessarily prepare you for what's yet to come, what will happen, because it'll prepare you for some particular scenarios that are set up in the way that are presented by your instructor, but you can never truly prepare for, what's to come in real life. And sometimes it's non-applicable. And no matter how much you train, no matter how much you try, no matter how much you do, you finally get to black belt, you finally master the arts, but then there are other ranks to achieve. And even if you achieve all those and you're an old man and you have gotten to what is essentially the highest rank you can get to, the highest of the high, you never stop learning, because at the end of the day, you go out there, you apply what you know, and it may not work in a particular situation, a particular scenario. There are new elements that are to be introduced, and new ways, new methods of thinking. We're always adapting, we're always learning, because otherwise we just stay still, we just stay stagnant, we stay the same in our old ways, our old methods. And I guess that's where I need to just calm down, stop being so negative, and say, look, you know everything you need to know. but at the same time, you don't know everything. But you already knew that. But at the same time, you can't count it as a waste of time if you still manage to learn from it. And I guess that's the lesson as well in this scenario of mine and many other situations, is where to succeed, you have to fail. Without failure, there is no success, because you don't learn from your failings. Just being given things, just being handed victories and everything, you don't learn, And maybe that'll come in to the next routine that I work on, but I'll keep that to myself for now. Just in case it's too funny, or just in case it's not funny at all. Nevertheless, I know I know the audience there did not like it when I died. That's how I died. I was dead, but I still went through as if it was a success. And there were a couple of people that jumped on that. And that's okay as well. That's okay, because there's some times where people lavish in the failure of others. But I gotta say, that is okay. And I'm okay with that. Because for someone to succeed, someone has to fail. For someone to win, someone has to lose. And unfortunately, that means that sometimes the people want somebody to win, they want somebody to lose. Now, some people were, I guess you could say, in this environment, it's like, well, that's a bit disrespectful. But you know what? It's a case of maybe it's just a realization, a wake-up call for some, where it's like, oh, he fell. He's mortal. He's wounded. He's down. This is now my chance to get up and seize the day and capitalize and advance themselves. If that is truly how they take it from a positive perspective, if they take it as, oh, my goodness, it happened to him as well. Instead of, simply, there's a part where, of course, disrespect comes in, where you want someone to win, obviously someone who has to lose. But then after that, to basically take negative and go towards, take the negative into the positive and basically get in someone's face and go, yeah, you suck, yeah. It's like, no, not called for, during the bouts, like you cheer one person, maybe you'll boo the actions of another. And I'm not saying I got cheers or boos on that particular night. But there are times in past competitions and settings where, yes, I have been cheered and I've been cheered against. But through it all, you stand up high, you stand up tall, and you go out with dignity and respect. And that in itself, even when I've run a race and I've gone through and I have been the last one, I didn't give up. I kept running. And I made it to the finish. I finished the race. And what does the audience do? I mean, they've done cheering the winners, and you've got the two people that are sprinting to the finish line. They're going, go Jason, go Nathan, come on, get to the finish line. Yeah! And you've got the one parent that's like, yeah, Jason. The other one that's like, oh, Nathan, oh, bloody Jason. But then at the end, you applaud their effort. You have respect for both, for all of them, because they got out there, they made the effort, and even the person that comes in last place, you might get, the applause, the cheer for it. It's like, you know what, you tried, you didn't make it to the end first, but you made it there anyway. Congratulations. Unless the person goes directly out to offend you and say F this and F you and F. It was interesting because the MC of that night did jump on it just a little, and it's like, you get your little pot shot where basically said, where'd the comedy go? And that got a pop out of the audience. And it's like, ha ha ha, you know what? You get that one. But at the same time, that's a shot taken. And that was him taking away from the situation, from even the attempt. And it wasn't very respectful. Now, who is this individual? Not going to mention by name because I don't care. But mentioning it by matter of principle because it's something that has always motivated me more, because now I don't have a choice but to once again prove the people wrong, because there are people throughout life that will always say, you don't have what it takes, you aren't successful, you know, you should quit, you should get out, you should, you know, and then they are the first people to tell you to quit. And often they are the last, if not they will be the very last person on earth to acknowledge, you know what, bloody hell, you proved me wrong. And not that I have to prove anything, but it's nice to do that because it gives me a challenge. A challenge to say, hey, you know what? And I even acknowledged, you know, and I went up to the person and I shook his hand and I said, I'll see you next time, because of being polite, you know. Nice to see you, good to see you next time. And then went back, contained myself, because, yeah, there's frustration and anger, but not at him, but at the scenario, but ultimately myself for creating that scenario where I died. You know, it's like even in a video game. You know that something's going to happen. You've seen it 1,000 times. You're on attempt number 1,000. Sometimes it takes a little longer. Sometimes you just got to step away, and that's exactly what I did. I didn't make any excuses. I didn't blame the game, which some people do. I didn't throw the controller down and say, you know, which a lot of people do. You know, it's the game's fault, it's the lag, it's this, it's that, it's, oh my god, freaking god, and then smash controller. Yeah, granted, I have done that with one particular game, only while I was playing by myself, with a game called Tekken, and only because I was frustrated because I legitimately had a bad controller. So I may have, because the controller was having a few issues, I needed to replace it anyway. So immaturely, I decided to show the controller who was the sentient boss and destroyed it. But it achieved nothing because now I didn't have any control. I had to go out and buy another one. It cost me, basically. By acting the way that I did, it cost me. This was when I was younger, by the way. This was when I was a teenager, like a rebellious teenager. It's like, yeah, I'll do what you tell me. No, but see, thing is, I did that, and it cost me. If I would have gone out of my way and said to him, hey, mate, what the hell, man? You're bagging me on stage? You know, you got no right to bloody well do that. You don't know all my stuff. I've had funny stuff too. You suck. If anyone sucks, it's you. It's like, because then if I say that, like that, in that badly acted scenario, what does that make of me? Because then I'm adding to that negativity, right? Because then it's proving that I'm trying to backtrack and say, well, I'm going to give him a piece of my mind. I'm going to tell him off. I'm going to tell him that, nah, mate. It's like, but if the person knows me, they already know that. And if they don't, and they've seen that, then it's like, okay, then that just means that the next time you're around, I have to prove differently. Not to you, but to myself. But not even prove. To show that it can still happen if I put the effort in. There are people that told me, don't do new routine, don't try new stuff. Probably should have listened. But at the same time, I knew my old stuff. My two best routines and a few other ones which I wanted to get at work on. This one was a challenge. I tried to make it work. it didn't. I could still try, take bits of it later, like I said before, but it would take some time to do. And I guess that it's a lesson for everyone, but mostly me, is no matter what, if I kill it at one venue and then die at another, it doesn't really make it a good effort on my part. Because if I would have done that at a paid gig, if that were an audition for something bigger, then they won't look at the positive, they'll look at the negative. Because if you have them, you're going, you're succeeding, but you fall over, you die, well, that's it. You kill, you're still alive. You die, you're dead. It's done. Sometimes you never recover because everyone's gone. Maybe they've walked out. Maybe they're just thinking to themselves in the audience, when's the next guy coming on? What's the time? Oh, I should really... I really need to go to the bathroom. I thought you went, or yeah, I need to go again. It's like, I'm really got a bit of cotton mouth right now. It's like, my jaw's sore from this fake smile. I need to get some alcohol into me to numb the pain from my jaw. And yes, sometimes even one person in the audience that says, I'm funnier than you. I'm going to tell a funny joke and get them on side. Nevertheless, what is my point? I've just completely lost the plot, haven't I? Point maybe lost, or maybe I've just said everything that's on my mind, and now my mind is drawing a blank. But it's definitely interesting to see just how far I've come, but that also with one mistake, it's still very easy to fall flat. Ultimately, you gotta do what got you to the dance. They say that about any performance. What got you to the dance, what got you there to begin with, is what you need to do constantly. Now, what does that mean exactly? It means put your best foot forward. It means do the best stuff that you have. The best form, the best routine, the best whatever happens to be. Do what works. Always do what you know will work. Do what you know will be successful. And there's nothing wrong, of course, with testing out something new, doing something, but then you've always got to be careful that if it's not working, but never give up as well. Because like I said, to succeed, you have to fail. Because you learn from that. Hey, my goodness. I've been talking for 30 minutes now. I think I might just stop it there with this certain discussion. So I think I've gotten my point across. And as anyone can tell right now, I'm outdoors. And I've got to be back at the next part of my course in about 5 minutes. So maybe it was a good listen. But hey, anyone who wants to talk and just bat it out with me, send a private message, maybe hit up on the Twitter, Liamo Wallstar on the Twitter. Maybe type in TVOR, TVOR, for this version of reality. Or maybe I'll even get you on the podcast and we'll have a discussion further into it. Because I know I'm not the only one that's fallen flat on my face before. And trust me, I have fallen many times, but I've gotten up every other time. And I know there are people as well, and fellow comedians and fellow performers, fellow different, actors as well, martial artists, athletes, you name it, that have had the issue where they've succeeded and succeeded and succeeded, and they've done something new, and it's caused them to fail temporarily. But I guess for the moment, that'll just have to do. It is time for another Facebook feed filler right here on this version of reality. let's see just what interesting articles have been saved in my feeds that I maybe have forgotten about and going to read right now because they're just so interesting. They are. Elderly couple straps caged puppy to roof of car as they travel 110 kilometers an hour. Back in September 25th. So an elderly couple. So Queensland on the Bruce Highway, because yeah, that's one of the most safest highways to drive along. Bruce Highway, not exactly, obviously sarcasm there. It is not really a safe highway. And Queensland's highway, to say the least, basically, they were caught as the four-wheel drive was on the highway for more than an hour and a half. So it was posted, and basically it was a Toyota Prado traveling between Gin and Maryborough. So they were traveling quite a long distance, and for at least an hour and a half. They were been traveling for quite some time, and the puppy. It's like a tiny little puppy. You couldn't have it in your freaking lap. There's some people that just shouldn't have animals, and let alone shouldn't have, it's like, just no words. Just disgusting behaviour. RSPCA being made aware of it, and they're investigating the matter further, which I guess means, in other words, if they hear anything or find out anything, then they'll probably investigate. But I'm not going to hold my breath on that one. But this is an incident where it's like, people who do that should be, the punishment should fit the crime. And that'd be where I'd say an apt punishment for them would obviously be to strip them of care of this puppy. So basically put the puppy up for adoption for a actual loving, caring family, and to put them in a cage, strap them to the roof of a car, maybe even a train, and just have them just as helpless and as scared and travelling just as fast along the same length and stretch that they had for their puppy. And, just see how they like it. Unbelievable. I cannot believe some people. Can you? Well, can you believe this person here that has, there's a lot, and I've even covered it in one of my routines, with regards to consent. And there's a girl that posted, this is just a random post from a random feed, that a girl thinks if you regret having sex, it means you've been raped. And then she ends up getting a perfect lesson on what consent is, as you certainly would on the internet, of all things. If you're wrong in the internet, whether you're wrong, actually wrong, factually wrong, or just in someone's opinion wrong, you're going to get schooled. But basically, so someone basically, the people that have reported, basically said, had consensual sex and regretted it later, I thought I wanted to do it, made a mistake, wasn't rape at all. If you regret it, then you didn't fully consent, and that is rape, she replied, who disagreed to that original post. And then, you may want to admit it, but you were raped because it was very traumatic. And this brilliant comeback, which I think is just, as well, if you regret consent, that consent is annulled and ceases to exist. And that's right there, nail on the head. It continues to say, if you regret having a child, that child is unborn and ceases to exist. If you regret taking an overdose, that suicide attempt is voided and the pills turn into Smarties in your stomach and you do not die. If you regret jumping off a rooftop, you stop falling mid-flight and magically reappear someplace safe, etc. I think that one right there pretty much covers it. I don't think I need to go any further in it, because that right there, I mean, the fact that someone, and that's, certainly don't get me wrong, because I've known people that have they've either been, statutorily raped or, even molested and assaulted, that sort of thing. And to even just misconstrue that idea and confuse the issue in that manner, and then basically use it for your own benefit and gain in that manner, it makes it that much more difficult for real victims to actually get to the bottom of the issue, to basically resolve their issues that they're having and hold perpetrators accountable, because then these perpetrators can then use those arguments as their defense and get off scot-free. It's already hard enough in many instances, and invasive and just almost embarrassing and humiliating to some people to have to go through the ordeal of even reporting and admitting that this happened to you. But then for someone to go to that length and basically say, oh, if you regret it later, then it's rape. It's like, well, then nobody should have any form of relations with you in that matter, because that makes you dangerous. And that alone, if someone believes your accusation, can serve to ruin a person's reputation and life. And there are some people as well that even serve jail time for a crime they never committed, but because the evidence seemingly weighed against them, and because people want to take that seriously and they want to believe, even in instances like this where it's not true, but still, because we want to believe that every case that comes forward is true and want to hold people accountable, because, rape is a horrible thing. It truly is. And every time something like this happens, it takes away from the seriousness of it. It makes it that much harder. Harder to prove, harder to define what consent is for people. Get confused by the issue, and just generally, it distracts us, because now we're arguing with this person over what consent is, rather than being there to defend a person who clearly hasn't given consent, and someone has essentially not respected their wishes and just gone ahead with a certain action anyway and violated the rights of another person. I guess that'll be all my input for that for now, but let's go to the next one. Here's something from TMZ, a bit of an old one, but nevertheless, good old 10 Mile Zone, about the NBA that sends out a memo that warns that players that don't stand for the national anthem do so at their own peril. That's rather interesting. According to the memo obtained by the ESPN, it says here, the league office will determine how to deal with any possible instance in which a player, coach, or trainer does not stand for the national anthem. So the memo goes on to say the rule is compulsory. Teams do not have the discretion to waive that rule. Interesting. Yes. So it doesn't say that it will... What does it say? It doesn't say that it will discipline players who don't stand, but it's clearly designed to inhibit them from breaking the so-called rules. Now, this whole ordeal with people kneeling for their national anthem, just not standing while the national anthem is played. There are two sides to it, very obviously. And one is that people view it as a sign of disrespect because this person isn't standing for their nation. But then at the same time, their argument is then that the nation is not standing for them. They're not standing up for them. That is why they're not standing up for the national anthem. And Michael Kaepernick is the most famous person to kneel during the national anthem in protest, especially of African Americans, which have been basically persecuted and have violated their rights, and the shootings that occurred and the injustices which have remained so, just basically done it in protest, and other people have followed suit, and people are losing control when they ask, please stand for the national anthem. People aren't doing that as much as they used to. On the one side, my 2 cents of opinion is that, first of all, stand, kneel, sit, whatever. It shouldn't matter. And also, the national anthem, I get the whole patriotism behind it, and I get the whole being proud of a nation, but to have to do that to prove yourself every single time, and to have to sing it and play it after every game, every time. I mean, maybe that's just my national arrogance from being Australia, but I don't recall the national anthem being played before every single basketball game that we have, or every single NRL, so basically every rugby match. You know, there are exceptions, obviously, when it is like a, you know, state of origin, for example, where it's New South Wales and Queensland, or maybe if it's a, you know, it's an international event where it's like Australia versus New Zealand, but then it's like, okay, our national anthem, their national anthem, and their haka. But then there's also arguments on our side regarding our national anthem because it's non-Indigenous, and I think only recently now the Aboriginal war dance is now included as ceremonial, but only at this time for the basically the Indigenous All-Stars match, which occurs in the NRL All-Stars, so basically Indigenous and non-Indigenous rugby match. I know, but this whole patriotism, and you have to do this, you have to, it does, to me, with all due respect, smell very closely in resemblance to another nation which had the problem with oppressing and, you know, dictatoring and rulering of this whole, you know, I think we all know what I'm referring to here, and a lot of people have made that same connotation. I think, personally, the issue with people either standing or kneeling is not an issue. You should ignore that. Get over it. It's not like they're hurting anyone. They're bringing awareness. And if you truly feel the way that you feel regarding the whole national anthem, then it's pretty simple. Stop playing the national anthem before every single match, every single event. We get it. You love your nation, you love a country, you love the place where you live, but you don't have to always prove it every second of the day because of a national anthem. You shouldn't have to be condemned for your actions. I would understand if it was desecration of a flag, or if they were intentionally interrupting or booing or heckling during a national anthem, but it is a peaceful protest, and as such they should really just be looking more or less, and I know this has been covered by many other people, but I'm just putting my name into that same list of people that have, but they should be focusing on the issues surrounding why that person is kneeling, rather than trying to make that person stand against his will. And that's just my 2 cents regarding that whole issue. Here's an old one, but a one that I'm sure that if no one else has actually been paying attention over the last few months, The Rock, that is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, has officially been filed for a 2020 presidential campaign. Now, what the hell is he going to do as president? Well, I guess you could say that he would be raising eyebrows and dropping elbows on all nations of candy asses. Yeah. Layeth the smackdown on Putin or North Korea, whoever they want to, you know. That's rather interesting. Now, I'd say, you know, I'd like to think that that's a serious, but maybe it's not. But the fact that, well, if Trump can become president of the United States of America, and he's as unpopular as he is, then you'd think that maybe if The Rock did a good had a good go of it and really put his best foot forward and campaigned well enough that he would be able to, because when's the next presidential election? Is it 2020? Is that when it is? Because, yeah, it is. So 2020 is when he'd be running in contention with Donald Trump. That'd be an interesting campaign to fight. Because there are people in America that believe that Trump is doing the nation good. And then there are the rest of us that are fortunate enough to have fully functioning brains. All due respect. But look at what the facts are. And look at what is happening in your own nation. And then get back to me on that. But I don't know. It could be interesting if he does actually get into the actual race. That'd be interesting, especially to see him kind of promo on all the other candidates. That right there. And also, it'd be perhaps the second time that a WWE superstar, because whether people like it or not, Donald Trump has featured on World Wrestling Entertainment and is technically a WWE superstar. It'd be the second time that a WWE superstar has won a presidency. And in this case, it'll be the second time, or rather the third time, that a person associated, or several times, because there are, because most famous example is, what's his name? Jesse the Body Ventura was he was a governor and quite some time, and also a political advocate and a very outspoken person on several different political views and such, and so it's not the first time. And also even Kane, or Glenn Jacobs of WWE, has run for, I think he's run for mayor, I forget where, but I guess that's where you guys could look that up. But still, not the first time that someone from WWE has ventured into governing office in some way, shape or form. And even you could say, Governor of California, Arnold Schwarzenegger, someone who had really no previous experience, but still made it into office, and not even originally born in America, but still got as far as he did. And he is an intelligent and well-spoken individual himself. I believe The Rock may very well have a chance. Will he win the presidency if he actually gets that far? I think that's something I'll just leave to the imagination, and perhaps close off the entire Facebook feed right here and say that's enough internet, that's enough Facebook feed for one day. I guess another thing I'd just quickly point out, and it's a little topic of discussion before I absolutely close this out, just something that was on my mind as well, because, and I think it's important to just quickly cover, when you are successful, you have failure and you analyze that, but it's also important, I believe, to analyze your success as well, because there are times where you succeed and you do well, but then is a level of success like you win, you kill, you do great. Sometimes it's important as well to analyze your success as well as your failures, where you can make improvements, where you can change things. Like in a race, you may have won by an inch, you may have won by a mile, but then to still analyze and say, right, what can you still improve on? And I guess as well, because most of the topic was relevant to stand-up comedy and sometimes kill, sometimes get killed. When you kill and you get laughs, and I've noticed this as well, not name names obviously, but still I've noticed this because it happens with a lot of people, and they have even talked about it as well. Because I know I've had that too, where in some venues you get much bigger laughs and others maybe big laughs but not quite as big. Sometimes you do material and particular jokes, and they will get a laugh at one venue, but then at another venue it'll get absolutely nothing. One thing that you do one time doesn't always work a second, but then trying to do the same thing over and over again and force it to happen, it's not always the best method either. So I guess that's something also to think about as well, is that what truly is a complete success and complete failure as well. You know, did something work? Is there something there that can be salvaged? Is there something there that you can improve on and make work? Or should you cut your losses? When you succeed, sometimes you got to ask yourself, was it just a fluke? Was it because you added, sometimes, in the beginning I've ad-libbed things and it's worked and it wasn't part of the material, but I've rolled with it and seen in a couple other venues does that particularly work. And it did in one, and then in another it didn't. But then on another case, one that I did, and I do it another venue. But if it doesn't work at every single place, because you can't choose your audience. And the way I figure it, and I know this is absolutely tough and strict and probably even some people would say absolutely insane and method that shouldn't use, but particularly with comedy and even with particular techniques in martial art, because I take them as one is the same, because I'm attacking them, I'm attacking with jokes, whereas a martial arts you attack with techniques. If it works, use it, and then use it on the next opponent, use it. But if it worked once and then it doesn't work again, don't try it. Don't keep trying it. Just stop. I've analyzed, with recent UFC fight, a guy who was doing kick after kick after kick after kick after kick, and it wasn't working, but he kept doing it for some odd reason. And then he threw a punch straight to the jawline of the competitor. I believe I'm pretty sure that was the TJ Dillashaw and Cody and TJ fight at the recent UFC 217, so that's where I draw back. TJ was throwing kick after kick after kick after kick, and there's several scenarios where people, they throw kicks, and it's just not working. And then he threw a punch, and it connected, and that's what won him the fight. What wins? What gets you the victory? That's what you need to focus on. What gets you success? If you do something over and over again and it doesn't work, but it worked once, it's not worth doing again, because you waste your time and you waste your energy, no matter what it is. Could be just generally a situation where you're in a fight scenario, or like I said, a particular joke in a comedy routine. But no matter what, if it works, continue doing it. If it doesn't, so that's where the analysis, I can't say words. I guess I need to stop podcasting after this, because I'm losing my English. Analysis of your success is just as important, because, like I said, you can't choose your audience. And while you might have gotten a good response at one venue, and then you go to another and they don't laugh, and then you say, well, they don't know what they're talking about. What if that's the only people that turn up to your gig? Then what will you do after that? Just what exactly will you do if they're the only people that continue to turn up to, like, maybe a paid gig, maybe a show, maybe a performance, maybe, a competition of some sort, and you blame it on the referee and say, like I said before, blame it on the referee. That referee doesn't know what he's talking about. That one over there was on my side. It's like, yep, but still, once again, got to be better than the referee. Got to do things that work on everyone, not just one person. Maybe if it works on one, you can throw it in and do it, but then you know that it's not going to work again. And I know that particularly as well. Like I said before, and seriously, if anyone does want to get on the podcast with me and extend on this discussion and a couple of the other ones which have happened, seriously, hit me up. because I'm sure we both got nothing better to do except whatever we're doing. But as for now, I've got something I got to do that's, unfortunately for everyone listening, is just a little more important than continuing to talk. But anyway, thank you all very much for listening. And as always, like, share, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And of course the podcast as well. Keep listening. Appreciate all the support. My name is Liam, and I will see you guys next time.